34 entries, 6 tiers. From ancient sea people who raided civilizations and then vanished without a trace, to zombie worms feasting on whale bones. These are the most disturbing ocean mysteries ever recorded. Let's start at the surface. Tier 1. The surface. Rogue waves. So, you think you know rough weather at sea? That's adorable. For centuries, sailors, usually half sunburnt and sleep deprived, told stories about sudden walls of water erupting out of calm seas and swallowing ships whole. The official maritime world, the folks in charge of, not losing ships, mostly just patted them on the head and probably made a note to check their rum rations. A 90-foot wave out of nowhere, you say? Fascinating. Did it have tentacles? Rogue waves weren't officially dismissed, but they were treated like myths. Mathematically possible, maybe, but too rare to plan around. Easier to call it bad luck when a vessel vanished without a trace. Then, New Year's Day, 1995 happened. The Dropner E-oil platform in the North Sea, a monument to engineering bolted to the ocean floor, was having a pretty standard stormy day. Suddenly, its laser instruments, bless their soulless, accurate little hearts, clocked a single, almost vertical wall of water, measuring 25.6 meters. That's nearly 84 feet, folks. More than double the height of the surrounding sea. Not a swell, not a buildup. Just a 10-story wall of water. Vertical, fast, and angry. So much for myth. Suddenly, all those sailors didn't seem so crazy. European satellites started spotting these oceanic assassins all over the globe, confirming that these weren't once-in-a-century events, but disturbingly common. Think of the countless ships lost without a trace. No distress call, nothing. The MS München, a massive German freighter, vanished in 1978. The official report blames severe weather. But what kind of weather hits that high and leaves no ship behind? Today, rogue waves are a recognized threat. We understand some of the ingredients: wind, current, overlapping wave patterns, but the exact trigger? Still up for debate. They don't show up on the radar in advance. There's no warning label. One moment you're on open water, the next you're not. They're not myth, they're not freaks. They're the ocean's version of a statistical anomaly, but with consequences. And we still don't fully understand yet. If a 10-story wall of physics-defying water freaks you out, wait until Tier 4's Devil's Sea starts yanking research vessels straight off radar. Same trick, but with volcanoes running the lighting rig. Whirlpools and Maelstroms. You've seen them on those spooky old maps, right? Ominous swirling vortexes in the middle of the sea, often labeled with the charming "Here be dragons" or "Abandon all hope." For a long time, whirlpools, especially the ship-eating kind, were treated more like sailor stories than science. Fantastic tales to scare novice sailors, or dramatic embellishments by writers like Edgar Allan Poe. The idea of the sea acting like a giant drain sounded dramatic, even by 19th century standards. But the mystery isn't that whirlpools exist. It's the sheer concentrated violence of specific legendary maelstroms and the unanswered questions about what truly happens when the sea decides to spin. Take the Moskstraumen off Norway. This isn't your bathtub drain. This is one of the planet's most powerful tidal flows being violently squeezed through a narrow, shallow strait littered with jagged underwater ridges. The result is a chaotic system of whirlpools, some reaching 150 feet across, with currents that can outpace a small boat. The mystery here isn't just the power, but the tales that surround it. For centuries, local fishermen have spoken of boats simply disappearing, or wreckage turning up far from where it should be, or nothing ever being found at all. What precisely happens to a vessel caught in the full fury of such a maelstrom? How many lost-at-sea incidents near these known vortex zones were not just storms, but the ocean itself pulling them under? Before radars and engines came along, when navigating the oceans was all about hard work and guesswork, how many of those dedicated sailors realized luck wasn't on their side before it was too late? And it's not alone. The Old Sow in Canada, the Corryvreckan off Scotland. These aren't just strong currents. They're specific places where the ocean doesn't behave like it's supposed to. Heracleion. Imagine a thriving port city, a gateway to Egypt, bustling with trade, filled with grand temples and colossal statues. Now imagine it just gone. Not burned, not looted, but slowly buried and consumed by the sea over time, vanishing beneath the waves for over 1,000 years. becoming a legend. That's the story of Heracleion, or Thonis Heracleion, as it was known to the Greeks and Egyptians. For centuries, it was thought to be a myth, mentioned in ancient texts but with no physical proof. Then in 2000, a French underwater archaeologist, Franck Godiot, and his team, after years of surveying, rediscovered it. Not in some far-flung forgotten corner of the world, but in Aboukir Bay, near Alexandria, lying under about 30 feet of water and the thick layer of sand and silt laid the remarkably intact ruins of the city. And what they found was breathtaking. Colossal statues of pharaohs and gods, some over 16 feet tall, rested upright in the sediment, frozen in place. Intricate temple carvings, gold coins, jewelry, everyday ceramics, and the hulls of over 60 ancient ships deliberately sunk in the city's harbor. The current theory is that the city was built on unstable Nile Delta silts, and a combination of earthquakes, liquefaction of the soil, and rising sea levels led to its slow, inevitable drowning sometime around the 8th century AD. Archaeologists lifted a 16-foot pharaoh statue. Tier 3 lifts something bigger, a shark tooth the size of that pharaoh's pinky. Sea people. Around the late Bronze Age, roughly 1200 BCE, the established civilizations of the Near East, Egypt, and the Aegean suddenly came under attack. From where? The sea. A mysterious confederation of maritime raiders, known to history only as the Sea Peoples, swept across the Mediterranean, toppling empires, sacking cities, and generally contributing to a regional collapse that helped end the Bronze Age and push several cultures into long periods of decline. Egyptian records, particularly from Pharaoh Ramesses III, depict desperate battles against these invaders. Inscriptions at Medinet Habu show Egyptian soldiers fighting a coalition of different groups, identified by names like the Peliset, Cheker, Shekelesh, Denyen, and Weshesh. Some of these names have been tentatively linked to later known peoples. The Peliset are often associated with the Philistines, for example. But the origins of many of these groups, and the reasons for their sudden coordinated migrations and attacks, remain one of history's biggest unresolved debates. Scholars have proposed that they originated from the Aegean or Anatolia, possibly displaced by famine, drought, or internal collapse, or that they formed a loose alliance of seafaring groups exploiting the decline of nearby empires. The Egyptians described them as coming from the sea in their warships, and none could stand against them. They fought on land and sea, often with their families in tow on ox carts, suggesting they weren't just raiding, they were migrating, looking for new lands to settle. Their attacks likely accelerated the collapse of the Hittite Empire, the destruction of major Mycenaean centers, and nearly brought Egypt to its knees. Then, as suddenly as they appeared, they disappeared from Egyptian records, likely assimilated, resettled, or absorbed into emerging cultures. The Sea People remain one of the most studied unknowns of the late Bronze Age, a force that disrupted empires, then disappeared from the record, leaving only ruins and unanswered questions for historians to piece together. And as if the mysterious sea civilizations weren't enough, the ocean holds even greater mysteries, long forgotten and swallowed to the depths, as you will see in the several upcoming entries, like this next one for example. Tier 2. Disappearances. Ghost ships. You've heard the term ghost ship. It conjures images of ancient, creaking galleons, tattered sails, maybe a skeleton crew playing dice for eternity. Spooky, sure, but mostly the stuff of pirate movies. But real ghost ships are a lot less theatrical, and a lot more unsettling. These are modern vessels, sometimes found perfectly intact, engines running, even a meal still warm on the table. The only thing missing? Every single soul on board. No signs of struggle, no violence, just gone. The ocean doesn't need drama. It just makes people disappear and moves on. Take the MV Joyita. In October 1955, this merchant vessel was found adrift in the South Pacific, partially submerged and waterlogged. All 25 passengers and crew had vanished. Now, the ship was in rough shape, sure. A corroded pipe had been slowly flooding the engine room, but the Joyita had a cork-lined hull, making it virtually unsinkable. It was designed to float no matter what, so why abandon it? The ship's logbook, sextant, and firearms were gone. 4 tons of cargo, including medical supplies, were also missing, though some reports suggest this might have been looted after it was found abandoned. Most chillingly, a doctor's bag was found on deck containing bloody bandages. The radio was tuned to the Universal Marine Distress Signal, but its wiring was damaged, giving it a range of only about 2 miles. Theories included pirates, mutiny, or panic triggered by radio failure. But none explain why 25 people left a floating vessel for life rafts and were never seen again. The ship kept its secrets. Fast forward to 2007, off the coast of Queensland, Australia, the Kaz 2, a modern catamaran, was found drifting. On board, the engine was running, a laptop was on, fishing lines were neatly deployed with baits still on the hooks, and a meal was apparently about to be served in the galley. All the life jackets were still stowed in their lockers. The only things missing were the 3 men who had been sailing her. It was as if they had simply evaporated into thin air mid-activity. Video footage recovered from the boat showed their last recorded moments looking perfectly normal. The coroner's inquest suggested a tragic sequence of events. Perhaps one man fell overboard while trying to free a tangled fish line. Another went to help. Then the third, with the boat still under sail or with the engine ticking over, simply drifting away from them faster than they could swim back. A plausible, mundane tragedy. Yet the image of that perfectly normal, empty boat sailing itself calmly through the waves is profoundly unsettling. What's strange is how normal everything looks, like the crew left in the middle of an ordinary day. These aren't isolated incidents. The ocean is littered with these maritime mysteries. Ships left behind like empty husks, their crew becoming just another whispered story. What could drive a crew to abandon a seaworthy vessel is still debated. We can speculate, but the ocean rarely gives up its secrets, or the dead. 1968 Submarine Disappearances. You think 1968 was all flower power and protests? Ask a submariner. That year, 4 submarines from 4 different nations disappeared without explanation. 4 of them, from 4 different major world powers. The Americans lost the USS Scorpion. The Soviets, their K-129. The French, the Minerve. And Israel, the INS Dakar. All vanished, all gone. 318 crew lost beneath thousands of feet of pressure and cold silence. These weren't outdated vessels. These were Cold War submarines, state-of-the-art for their time, packed with technology and highly trained crews designed to lurk in the silent deep. And yet, one after another, they just dropped off the map. No distress calls for most, no warning, just gone. Think about that. You're sealed in a metal tube hundreds of feet beneath the waves, the pressure outside enough to turn you into human pate in an instant, and then something goes catastrophically wrong? But what? Official reports suggest mechanical failures, navigation issues, or structural collapse. Catastrophic technical failures. Well, no kidding, Sherlock. Which is another way of saying something failed fast and there was no margin for error. Alternate theories cite rogue waves, underwater landslides, or navigation errors from magnetic anomalies. Imagine the very Earth you're navigating by suddenly lying to you, leading you into an abyss you can't see. The wrecks of some were eventually found years, even decades later, mangled heaps on the sea floor, offering few solid answers, just more chilling questions. The Scorpion, for instance, sits over 10,000 feet down. What ripped it apart? We still don't definitively know. It's a reminder, the deep ocean doesn't care how advanced the technology is, or how many people are inside it. SS Waratah. Some ships go down fighting, sending distress calls, leaving debris fields. Others just vanish without a trace. The SS Waratah was one of them. We're talking 1909. This was a brand new 500-foot passenger steamship, the pride of the Blue Anchor Line, on a voyage from Durban, South Africa towards Cape Town. She had 211 souls on board, passengers and crew. After leaving Durban on July 26th, she was sighted once more by another ship the next day. And then, nothing. No wreckage, no lifeboats, no bodies. Now this wasn't some leaky old tub. This was a modern vessel for its time. But the ocean off South Africa, the infamous Wild Coast, is a beast. It's known for the rogue waves we mentioned earlier, sudden, massive walls of water that have taken down ships before. Some theories suggest the Waratah was top-heavy, prone to capsizing in extreme conditions. One passenger actually got off in Durban, claiming he had nightmares of the ship sinking. Interpret that however you want. For over a century, people have been looking for the Waratah. Numerous expeditions, sonar sweeps, you name it. They found other wrecks, but not this one. It's as if she crossed into part of the sea that never planned to give her back. Theories include a rogue wave, structural instability, or boiler failure. But without wreckage, no conclusion has ever been reached. With 211 people lost and no physical evidence ever found, the Waratah remains one of the most complete disappearances in modern maritime history. It's one of those cases where the evidence never showed up, and probably never will. USS Cyclops. If you thought that the SS Waratah was a spooky disappearance, let me introduce you to the USS Cyclops. This wasn't just some quaint passenger liner. This was a massive US Navy collier ship, over 540 feet long, a veritable beast of burden designed to carry thousands of tons of coal. In March 1918, right in the thick of World War I, she set sail from Brazil, laden with manganese ore, bound for Baltimore. She made a stop in Barbados and then disappeared without a trace, with 309 crew and passengers. No distress signal, no wreckage ever found. It remains the single largest non-combat loss of life in U.S. naval history. Now, the area she and the Cyclops disappeared overlaps with what people now call the Bermuda Triangle. Theories? Oh, there are plenty. Did she capsize in a sudden storm? Manganese ore can shift, and if it get wet, it can become almost like a liquid, destabilizing a ship in a heartbeat. Was she a victim of a German U-boat? The Germans denied it, and there's no record of an attack. There were even rumors of mutiny or deliberate sabotage by the captain, though no credible evidence ever surfaced. The sheer size of the Cyclops makes her disappearance even more baffling. A ship that big doesn't just vanish without a trace. Where did the debris go? Why no SOS? President Woodrow Wilson himself said, "Only God and the sea know what happened to the great ship." And so far, neither of them is talking. It's a reminder that even the biggest vessels aren't immune to vanishing. Mary Celeste. The Mary Celeste. In December 1872, this American brigantine was found adrift in the Atlantic, near the Azores, perfectly seaworthy, sails set, heading towards the Strait of Gibraltar. Her cargo of denatured alcohol was mostly untouched, plenty of food and water on board, personal belongings of the crew still in their quarters. The captain's logbook? Its last entry was 10 days prior, noting nothing unusual. The only things missing? The captain, his wife, their 2-year-old daughter, and the 7-man crew, and the lifeboat. There were no signs of a struggle, no signs of piracy, as the cargo and valuables were still there. The ship was wet, with some water in the hold, but not an alarming amount. One pump was disassembled, as if someone had tried to repair it. A sounding rod was found on deck. That's it. That's all the clues we have. The most widely accepted theories include panic over alcohol fumes causing a feared explosion, a damaged pump misreading leading to a premature evacuation, or navigational error in poor conditions. Rogue waves and rare weather phenomena have also been suggested, but no explanation fully accounts for the abandoned but intact vessel. But none of it quite fits the eerie calm found on the ship. The Mary Celeste sailed on, a perfectly good vessel, minus her human occupants. Flannan Isles Mystery. December 1900. The Flannan Isles, a remote, uninhabited cluster of rocks off the rugged west coast of Scotland. On one of these isles, Eilean Moor, stands the lighthouse, a lonely beacon against the brutal North Atlantic storms. 3 keepers were stationed there: Thomas Marshall, James Ducat, and Donald MacArthur. Experienced men, used to the isolation. On December 15th, a passing steamer noticed the light was out. Bad weather prevented any investigation for days. Finally, on December 26th, a relief vessel managed to land. What they found was a station that looked abandoned mid-shift. The lighthouse was locked from the inside. The clocks had stopped. The lamps were cleaned and refilled, ready to be lit. A set of oilskins was still on its peg, meaning one keeper had gone out into the storm without his foul weather gear. The last entry in the logbook for December 15th spoke of severe winds, the likes of which the keeper had never seen in 20 years, and noted that Ducat was very irritable, and MacArthur had been crying. Which is weird, because MacArthur was a tough, seasoned mariner, not known for breaking down. Another entry mentioned the storm was so bad the men had been praying. But the truly bizarre part? No bodies were ever found. No sign of a struggle. The landing stage on the west side of the island was damaged by the storm, true. But why would all 3 experienced keepers abandon their posts, one without proper gear, during such a tempest? The leading theory? A freak wave hit while they were checking storm damage and swept them into the ocean. 2 missing sets of gear back that up. Other theories, pirates, spies, murder, suicide, make great pub talk, but there's zero evidence. And if that doesn't unsettle you, just wait. Some islands disappear entirely. Phantom Islands. For centuries, maritime charts were peppered with islands that, well, weren't actually there. These are Phantom Islands. Places like Antillia, High Brazil, St. Brendan's Isle, Doherty Island. Sailors would report sighting land, sometimes even landing on it, describing its features, its inhabitants. Cartographers would duly add it to their maps. Then subsequent voyages would sail right over the supposed location and find nothing but open ocean. Now, some of these can be explained. misidentification of actual islands due to navigational errors. This was pre-GPS, remember. Icebergs mistaken for land, atmospheric mirages like Fata Morganas, which can make distant objects appear distorted, elevated, or even duplicated, sometimes looking convincingly like islands or coastlines. Pumice rafts from undersea volcanic eruptions could temporarily form what looked like new land. But some phantom islands persisted on maps for centuries, with multiple seemingly credible sightings. High Brazil, off the coast of Ireland, was said to appear only once every 7 years, shrouded in mist. Doherty Island in the South Pacific was discovered in 1841 by Captain Doherty, who described it as 5 to 6 miles long with a high bluff. It was sighted several more times over the next few decades, its position dutifully noted. Then, in the early 20th century, expeditions sailed to its charted location and found nothing. Depths of over 2,000 fathoms. No land for hundreds of miles. Where did Doherty Island go? Did it sink? Was it always a collective hallucination? A trick of the light? Or just the same navigation error repeated enough to become official? Phantom Islands are more than just cartographical curiosities. They're a weird intersection of human perception, the vastness of the ocean, and the fallibility of our senses and records. They're artifacts of old maps and older assumptions. Or maybe the radioactive toxic stuff mysteriously found in the seabed that we'll talk about in Tier 4 has something to do with this. Tier 3. Hidden below. Mystery of Megalodon. Megalodon. The name alone sends a shiver down your spine. Otodus Megalodon, as the smart people call it, the largest shark that ever lived. We're talking a predator that could reach lengths of 60, even 70 feet, with teeth the size of your hand. It feasts on whales for breakfast. For about 20 million years, it was the undisputed king of the oceans. Then, around 3.6 million years ago, it disappeared from the fossil record. Officially, it's extinct. But is it really extinct? That question keeps cryptozoologists and a few YouTube thumbnails awake at night. The official scientific consensus is a firm yes, it's gone. The reasons cited include cooling ocean temperatures that restricted its habitat, a decline in its primary food source, large whales adapting to colder waters where megalodons couldn't follow, and competition from newly evolving predators like the great white shark, which is like a feisty terrier compared to Megalodon's Tyrannosaurus rex. However, the ocean is vast. We've explored, maybe 5% of it? And megalodon teeth, relatively fresh ones in geological terms, thousands, not millions of years old, are still occasionally dredged up from the deep ocean floor. Are these just reworked fossils, churned up from older sediments? Probably, but it plants that little seed of doubt. Then, there are the anecdotal sightings. Fishermen reporting encounters with impossibly large sharks, unexplained attacks on whales, grainy sonar images of something enormous lurking in the depths. Most of these can be dismissed as misidentification, exaggeration, or hoaxes. But the what if is potent. Could a remnant population have survived in the deep ocean? It's unlikely, very unlikely. But the ocean is good at hiding things, and people are good at speculating. The thought that something that big, that predatory might still be out there, well, it makes a trip to the beach a little more interesting, doesn't it? It's one of the ocean's favorite hypotheticals, a prehistoric predator people still want to believe is lurking, even if the data says otherwise. And by the way, here are the two of the two sea monsters side by side. 2003 Great White Incident. Great white sharks. Apex predators, sure, until something bigger comes along. In 2003, off the coast of Western Australia, researchers tagged a perfectly healthy 9-foot-long great white shark. Let's call her Shark Alpha for a study. The tag was designed to record data like depth and temperature. 4 months later, the tag washed ashore. And the data it contained? Well, for the first few weeks, Shark Alpha behaved normally, swimming around, doing sharky things. Then suddenly, the tag recorded a rapid, terrifying plunge. Shark Alpha dove to a depth of 1,900 feet, way deeper than great whites usually bother going. At the same time, the temperature reading shot up dramatically, from a chilly 46 degrees Fahrenheit to a balmy 78. That's an unusual temperature spike for a depth that cold. The only way for the tag to experience that kind of internal pressure spike is if Shark Alpha was eaten, swallowed whole by something much, much bigger, and presumably much warmer inside. But what eats a 9-foot great white? And what kind of creature hangs out at nearly 2,000 feet deep, has a core body temperature that high, and is capable of overpowering and consuming an apex predator? The data suggests, whatever it was colossal. The tag stayed inside this unknown predator for several days, still recording, before presumably being, expelled. Theories range from a supersized unknown species of shark, a megalodon if you're feeling frisky with speculation, though officially they're long gone, to a particularly aggressive large-toothed whale. But the data doesn't match any known predator. Just a reminder that apex predator is a flexible title in the deep. Diel vertical migration. Think your daily commute's bad? Try following a billion other organisms through pitch black water twice a day. Every single day, as the sun dips below the horizon, the largest migration on Earth kicks off in the oceans. And you probably don't even know it's happening. We're talking about Diel vertical migration. Trillions, and I mean trillions with a capital T, of tiny zooplankton, squid, and small fish make a synchronized journey from the deep, dark parts of the ocean, hundreds, sometimes thousands of feet up towards the surface to feed. Then, before dawn, they all turn around and swim right back down into the crushing blackness to hide from predators. Imagine the sheer biomass involved. It's like every insect, bird, and small rodent on land suddenly decided to fly up to the stratosphere every night and then dive back down before sunrise. Every single day, in perfect unison. The combined weight of these tiny commuters is staggering, dwarfing any land migration you can think of. Scientists have detected this massive movement on sonar for decades. A false bottom that rises and falls with the sun. But here's what's unusual. While we know what they're doing, avoiding being eaten in daylight and finding food at night, the exact triggers for this colossal synchronized movement across entire ocean basins, still a bit fuzzy. How do they all know when to go, on such a vast scale, with such precision? Light cues, obviously, but the fine-tuning, the internal clocks, the sheer coordination of this planetary scale pulse of life moving up and down in the darkness, and most people have no idea this migration happens below them every single night. Tier 4. Ocean Anomalies. Beryllium-10 anomaly in the Pacific seabed. Alright, let's get a little nerdy, but stick with me. There's this stuff called beryllium-10. It's a radioactive isotope, and it gets made when cosmic rays, particles zipping through space from God knows where, smack into the Earth's atmosphere. It then rains down and settles on the ocean floor, building up over millions of years in things like ferromanganese crusts, which are basically slow-growing metallic potato chips of the deep. Scientists use beryllium-10 like a clock to date ancient geological events. Neat, right? Well, some researchers were poking around these crusts from the Pacific seabed, expecting the usual tick-tock of beryllium-10. Instead, they found nearly double the concentration they were expecting in layers corresponding to the last few million years. One theory is that a nearby supernova, or a series of them, went off a couple of million years ago. An exploding star, or stars, bathing our little corner of the galaxy in an increased shower of cosmic rays, upping the beryllium-10 production. Imagine that, the death throes of distant suns writing messages in the mud at the bottom of our deepest ocean. The other idea is a bit more terrestrial but no less dramatic. Massive long-term shifts in ocean circulation patterns, may be tied to climate change around Antarctica, could have concentrated the beryllium-10 in certain areas. Either way, it's a puzzle. Is the seabed telling us about cosmic violence, or about our planet's own internal convulsions on a scale that's hard to grasp? Baltic Sea Anomaly. If you're the kind of person who spends too much time on Google Maps looking for weird shapes, you'll love the Baltic Sea Anomaly. Back in 2011, some Swedish treasure hunters, the Ocean X team, were doing their thing, pinging the seabed with sonar. Probably hoping for Viking gold or a lost shipment of vodka. Instead, their sonar painted a picture of something odd. Sitting about 300 feet down was a huge circular object, roughly 200 feet across, looking like a giant stone mushroom, or if you're feeling dramatic, a crashed UFO. Naturally, the internet being, well, the internet, lost its collective mind. Is it a sunken alien spacecraft? The plug to the netherworld? A Nazi anti-submarine device? The sonar images showed what looked like ramps, stairways, and other non-natural looking features. It even seems to have a drag mark behind it, as if it skidded to a halt. Now, most geologists, the party poopers of the ancient alien circuit, lean towards it being a glacial deposit. Basically, a weirdly shaped rock dropped by a melting glacier during the last ice age. They argue that sonar can play tricks on you, and what looks like sharp angles and smooth surfaces might just be the way the sound waves bounce off certain types of rock. Divers who've been down there reported that electrical equipment, including satellite phones and cameras, would cut out when directly above the object. The Ocean X team themselves claimed samples they brought up contained unusual metals, Of course, these claims are debated, and more sober analyses suggest it's just rock. But the shape is undeniably weird. It's a perfect Rorschach test. You see what you want to see. A fascinating natural formation, or something else, silently resting in the cold, dark waters of the Baltic, keeping its secrets. And while the Baltic Sea Anomaly just might be all speculation, a few entries down, we'll get into deep-sea discoveries that are anything but. But first, let's take a look at yet another structural sea anomaly, Yonaguni Monument. Off the southern coast of Yonaguni, Japan, lies something that makes you question what natural even means. Discovered by a local diver in 1986, it's a massive underwater rock formation, about the size of a couple of football fields, featuring what looks like enormous flat terraces, sharp right angles, towering step pyramids, and distinct pillar-like structures. It looks, for all the world, like a sunken city, an ancient man-made complex swallowed by the sea. But on one side, you have people, including some academics like Masaki Kimura, a marine geologist, who are convinced it's an artificial structure, a relic of a lost civilization dating back perhaps 10,000 years, before the end of the last ice age when sea levels were lower. They point to the seemingly carved steps, the walls, even what some interpret as a giant turtle-shaped carving. If they're right, this thing rewrites a hefty chunk of human history. On the other side, the more mainstream geologists roll their eyes and say, it's sandstone. They argue that sandstone fractures naturally along bedding planes, creating these sharp, regular-looking shapes, especially in an area with strong currents and seismic activity. They claim every man-made feature can be explained by natural geological processes, no tool marks, no independent artifacts found directly associated with the structure itself. Bimini Road. Off the coast of Bimini in the Bahamas, lying in shallow crystal clear water, is a formation that's launched 1,000 ancient aliens theories. It's called the Bimini Road, or sometimes the Bimini Wall. It's an underwater arrangement of large, rectangular to polygonal limestone blocks, running in a roughly straight line for about half a mile. Some of these blocks are huge, up to 13 feet across, and they look, for all the world, like carefully laid paving stones, or the remnants of a massive ancient wall or pier. Naturally, when something looks man-made but is sitting underwater, people start thinking Atlantis. The psychic Edgar Cayce famously predicted that the remnants of the lost continent would be found near Bimini around 1968 or 1969. And lo and behold, the Bimini Road was discovered by divers around that exact time. Coincidence or prophecy fulfilled? The blocks appear fitted together. Some even look like they have tool marks or tongue and groove joints. If it's man-made, it would have to be thousands of years old, from a time when sea levels were much lower. Now, geologists have a more mundane explanation. They say it's beach rock, basically sand and shells that get cemented together by calcium carbonate in the intertidal zone, forming a hard rock layer. This beach rock, they argue, can naturally fracture into these regular blocky shapes due to stress and weathering. They point to similar formations elsewhere, but the sheer scale, the apparent organization, and the almost pavement-like appearance of the Bimini Road keep the mystery alive. Are we looking at a remarkable natural phenomenon that just happens to mimic ancient masonry? Or are we seeing the eroded, submerged foundations of a structure built by hands unknown? A silent, watery clue to a past we've forgotten. The Quackers, U.S.S.R. Submarine Acoustic Anomalies. The Cold War was a weird time, especially under the ocean. Both the US and the Soviets had their nuclear submarines playing a very tense, very quiet game of cat and mouse in the deep. And sometimes the Soviets heard things their sonar operators couldn't explain, things they nicknamed Quackers. Starting in the late 1960s and into the late 1980s, Soviet submarine crews, particularly those operating the North Atlantic and Arctic, began reporting strange, repetitive acoustic signals. These weren't the usual clicks and whistles of whales and dolphins. They were described as sounding like, well, quacks, or sometimes chirps, croaks, or even a sound like a frog in a tin can. These signals would often appear suddenly, seem to follow the submarine, sometimes even mimic its maneuvers, and then disappear just as abruptly. Freak the hell out of the crews, as you can imagine. You're in a metal tube, hundreds of feet down, surrounded by enemies both known and unknown, and suddenly your sonar is picking up what sounds like a squadron of angry metallic ducks keeping pace with you. Naturally, the first suspicion was the Americans. Was it some new, sophisticated US anti-submarine warfare or ASW technology? Some kind of acoustic decoy? or a system designed to track Soviet subs and mess with their sonar. The US, of course, never admitted to anything like that. Other theories included unusual marine life, like a previously unknown species of a whale or squid with a bizarre vocalization, complex underwater acoustic reflections, or even some kind of mass hysteria or misinterpretation of known sounds by stressed out sonar operators. Some Russian sources even suggested these quackers were bioacoustic weapons, or even underwater organisms being deliberately used or attracted by US forces. The phenomenon was widespread enough that the Soviet Navy took it very seriously, issuing directives on how to react to quacker encounters. Most of the reports faded away by the late 1980s, so what were they? A secret US weapon that was later retired? A misidentified natural phenomenon? Or something else? Something stranger, lurking in the cold, dark waters of the high north, communicating in a language of unsettling metallic quacks. The quackers remain one of the Cold War's more bizarre and largely unanswered underwater mysteries. Devil's Sea. Everyone knows the Bermuda Triangle, right? The Atlantic's little patch of nope? Well, the Pacific has its own version, and it's arguably got a spookier name. The Devil's Sea, also known as the Dragon's Triangle or the Formosa Triangle, lies off the coast of Japan, south of Tokyo. And just like its Atlantic cousin, it's got a reputation for making ships and planes do a disappearing act. The stories go way back, but things really picked up in the post-war era. Fishing boats vanished. Military planes went silent. The most famous incident involved the Japanese research vessel, the Kaiomaru No. 5, sent out in 1952 by the Japanese government specifically to investigate the dangers of the Devil's Sea after several other vessels were lost. It disappeared with all 31 crew members. The irony, the very ship sent to find out why ships were vanishing, vanished. Now, skeptics will tell you, and they're not entirely wrong, that this is a busy shipping lane and a volcanically active area. Sudden storms, undersea eruptions, creating navigational hazards like pumice rafts or even temporary islands. Sure, that could account for some losses. But then there are the stories of malfunctioning compasses, lost time, and strange lights. The Japanese government even reportedly declared the area a danger zone at one point. Green Flash. This one's less existential horror and more fleeting, otherworldly weirdness. You've probably heard of it, the Green Flash. It's that elusive, momentary flash of green light that can sometimes be seen just as the sun is sinking below the horizon, or, even more rarely, just as it's rising. For centuries, sailors whispered about it, a sign of good luck, or maybe that you'd had a bit too much grog. It sounds like folklore, but it's a real, documented, atmospheric optical phenomenon. Basically, as the sun's light passes through more of the Earth's atmosphere at sunset or sunrise, the atmosphere acts like a prism, refracting or bending the light. Shorter wavelengths like blue and green are bent more than longer wavelengths like red and orange. Usually, the blue light gets scattered away by air molecules. That's why the sky is blue, kids. But under the right, very specific conditions, a clear, unobstructed horizon, stable air, just as the last sliver of the sun disappears or the first sliver appears, you might see that brief, brilliant flash of green light. Sometimes, if you're really lucky, even blue or violet. It lasts for just a second or two. Blink and you miss it, and the conditions have to be perfect. That's what makes it so mysterious and almost legendary. It's not a hallucination, it's physics. But it's physics doing a magic trick. It's the ocean and the atmosphere conspiring to give you a tiny emerald wink, a fleeting glimpse of the spectrum that's usually hidden. A naturally occurring flash of green sounds cool, but you know what's cooler? When the ocean starts mimicking the Milky Way galaxy itself. More on that in a bit. But first, let's add more color to our sea mysteries and talk about purple orbs. Tier 5, the creatures lurking beneath. Purple orbs. Alright, so the deep sea, right? That dark, crushing part of the planet where the sun don't shine, and things with too many teeth and not enough eyeballs float around. You'd think we've seen all the weirdness it has to offer, but no. The ocean just keeps on giving. This time, it served up purple orbs. Yeah, you heard me. Gelatinous, glowing-ish purple blobs. The brainiacs over at Nautilus Live with their fancy deep-sea robots stumbled across these things chilling on the ocean floor. And because scientists can't leave well enough alone, they scooped some up. Now, here's where it gets mildly interesting. Or at least, where the lab coats start scratching their heads. They did DNA sequencing, expecting it to match some obscure sea cucumber's distant cousin or a particularly moody jellyfish. Nope. The DNA came back as a question mark. Doesn't match any known species. Zip. Zilch. Nada. So what are they? Alien eggs waiting for the right cosmic tide? The ocean's way of saying it's developed a very niche skin condition? Or, and this is my personal favorite, maybe it's just some primordial goo that got bored and decided to try being purple for a while. The ocean's full of mysteries. This is just one that happens to be purple. The 52 Hertz whale. Enter the 52 Hertz whale, or as the more romantically inclined call it, the loneliest whale in the world. For decades, since the Cold War hydrophones first picked it up back in the late 80s, scientists have been eavesdropping on this thing. It's a whale song, or at least it sounds like one. But here's the thing. It sings at a frequency of 52 Hertz. Now, for us landlubbers, that's just a number. Blue whales, they rumble around 10 to 39 Hertz. Fin whales, a cool 20 Hertz. This guy, or gal, or whatever it is way off key, singing solo in a register no other known whale uses. So for years, this phantom voice has been echoing through the North Pacific. We hear it, track its migration patterns, which are also kinda weird and don't perfectly match other species. But has anyone actually seen the creature making the noise? Not a chance. Not a single glimpse. Naturally, because humans love a sad story, everyone latched on to the loneliest whale narrative. Is it the last call of its kind, calling out for companions who will never answer? Is it a hybrid, some genetic hiccup that left it unable to communicate with its peers? Or maybe it's just a regular whale with a really, really unique voice. Scientists have theories, of course. A malformed vocal setup? A unique subspecies? They toss ideas around, publish papers, but the truth is, without a body to point at, it's all just educated guesswork. The 52 Hertz call is still out there, a singular, enigmatic structure in the vast, indifferent ocean. Milky Seas. Picture this. You're on a ship, middle of the night, black ocean all around. Then, the water starts to glow. Not just a sparkle here and there, but the entire damn sea, as far as you can see, lights up with this eerie, uniform, milky white luminescence. Bright enough to read a book by, they say. Sailors have been reporting this for centuries. Over 400 years of what in God's name is that? It's the Milky Seas phenomenon. For ages, these were just spooky sailor stories, filed away with sea monsters and mermaids. But then we got satellites, and guess what? The satellites started seeing them too. Huge patches of ocean, sometimes stretching for thousands of square miles, like someone spilled a galactic-sized bottle of glow-in-the-dark paint. One sighting in 1995 off the coast of Somalia covered an area roughly the size of Connecticut. The current best guess is bioluminescent bacteria. Trillions upon trillions of tiny Vibrio Harvey, or similar microbes, all having a rave at the same time. But why? What makes them all light up in unison over such vast areas, creating this steady, otherworldly glow instead of the usual fleeting flashes? Nobody really knows the trigger. Are they communicating? Is it a response to some specific nutrient bloom? A massive bacterial love-in? Or is it something stranger? A biological alarm bell for conditions we don't yet understand? It's unsettling because it's biological, it's massive, and it's largely unexplained. An entire ocean surface turning into a ghostly lamp for reasons unknown. Montauk Monster. Summer 2008. Ditch Plains Beach, Montauk, Long Island. A popular surfing spot. Some locals stumble across a carcass washed up on the shore, and it is uniquely hideous. It looked vaguely canine, but with a weird beak-like snout. No visible fur, though it was decomposed, and oddly proportioned limbs. The photos hit the internet, and the Montauk Monster was born. Speculation went wild. Was it a dog, a raccoon, a turtle without its shell? Don't laugh, this was a serious theory. Or, given its proximity to the Plum Island Animal Disease Center, a government facility notorious for researching animal diseases and, according to conspiracy theorists, some kind of escape genetic experiment gone wrong. Plum Island, by the way, is just a short boat ride away. Perfect fodder for a creature feature. Scientists who looked at the photos mostly leaned towards decomposed raccoon. The argument is that when a raccoon decomposes in water, the fur sloughs off, the flesh bloats and distorts, and the snout can appear more pointed and beak-like, as the lips and nose cartilage decay. Sounds plausible, if a bit anticlimactic, but the photos are undeniably weird. The creature's proportions seem off, even for a bloated raccoon. And then, just as quickly as it appeared, the carcass disappeared, reportedly taken away by an unidentified man, or maybe just reclaimed by the tide, depending on who you ask. The lack of a body for a proper scientific analysis means the Montauk Monster remains a wonderfully grotesque and conveniently unresolved local legend. It's a perfect example of how the ocean can deliver something truly baffling to our doorstep, and then snatch it away before we get too many answers. Or maybe someone just had a very weird looking dog and a very bad day. But this creature is nothing compared to the fascinating sea monsters you'll be encountering in the upcoming segments. Mariana Trench Creatures. So you think your daily grind is tough? Imagine living nearly 7 miles down, in the Mariana Trench. It's the deepest part of the ocean, a place where sunlight is a forgotten rumor, and the pressure is over 1,000 times what you're feeling right now. For us, it's instant obliteration. For some things, it's just Tuesday. Down there, in that crushing eternal blackness, life isn't just surviving. It's getting weird. We're talking organisms that have basically told physics to go screw itself. They've got flesh so resistant to pressure it makes Kevlar look like wet tissue paper. And blood? Forget that friendly red stuff. Some of these deep-sea dandies are thought to use metals in their biological processes, maybe even in their blood equivalents, to cope with the extreme conditions and bizarre chemistry. Think about that. Creatures with metallic circulatory systems, engineered by evolution to thrive in a hellscape. And how do they make more of themselves? Good question. Reproducing in total darkness, under unimaginable pressure, where finding a mate must be like finding a specific needle in a lightless, planet-sized haystack full of other needles. The mechanics are largely unknown. Are they budding, spawning into the abyss, engaging in some kind of pressure-packed procreation we can't even conceive of? These aren't just animals. They're biological impossibilities, living testaments to the idea that no matter how hostile the environment, life will find a way to exist, and often to be deeply, deeply unsettling. They're a reminder that the definition of life is way broader and more terrifying than we like to admit. Sleep tight. Barreleye Fish. Just when you think evolution has run out of ways to be utterly bizarre, the deep sea coughs up something like the barreleye fish. Macropina microstoma. Now, most fish have eyes on the sides of their head. Sensible. Barreleyes? They decided to go full avant-garde. This thing has a transparent, fluid-filled dome for a forehead, like living in a snow globe. And inside that see-through head, that's where its eyes are. 2 large, green, tubular eyes, usually pointing straight up, looking out through its own transparent skull. I'm not making this up. For a long time, scientists were baffled. They'd catch these things in nets, and the delicate transparent dome would usually be destroyed, leaving them with a fish that looked like it had no top to its head and weird, fixed, upward-staring eyes. They figured it could only look up, probably to spot the silhouettes of prey against the faint light filtering down from above. A bit limiting, you'd think. Then, in 2009, researchers at the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute managed to observe one alive and intact in its deep-sea habitat using remotely operated vehicles. And they discovered the barrel eye's secret. Those internal upward-pointing eyes, they can rotate. So, it can look straight up to find food. And then, as it orients itself to feed, it can rotate its eyes forward to see what it's eating. All while its eyes remain safely protected inside that fluid-filled transparent shield, possibly from the stinging cells of siphonophores, which are like long dangly jellyfish curtains from which the barreleye is thought to steal food. It's an anatomical solution so outlandish, so specifically tailored to its light-starved, bizarre environment, makes you wonder what other biological impossibilities are still swimming around down there, with heads full of nightmare engineering. Zombie worms. Osedax. Alright, let's talk about what happens when something big dies in the deep ocean. A whale, for instance, finally gives up the ghost and sinks thousands of feet to the cold, dark seabed. This whale fall becomes an oasis of food in the nutrient-starved abyss, a feast for scavengers, and among the cleanup crew are some of the most existentially horrifying little critters you could imagine. Meet Osedax, the zombie worms. These things are special. They have no mouths, no stomachs, no butts. They look like feathery little plants growing out of bones of dead whales. But those feathery plumes are their gills. And the roots, those are the real horror show. These worms secrete acid from their roots to dissolve the hard whale bone, absorbing the fats and proteins straight through their skin-like structures. They are literally melting their way into the skeletons of the dead. I wish I was kidding. And it gets weirder. The Osedax, you see, the one with the plumes, are all female. The males, they're microscopic dwarves that live inside the females' bodies, sometimes dozens of them, basically acting as live-in sperm factories. So you have these bone-dissolving female zombie worms packed with tiny internal husbands, covering whale skeletons on the abyssal plain. They're a testament to life's relentless drive to exploit every single niche. Even if that niche is acid melting the skeletons of leviathans in eternal darkness. They are nature's ultimate undertakers, a silent, boneless, mouthless, buttless horror, ensuring nothing truly goes to waste. Not even the marrow deep within. Immortal Jellyfish. You work your whole life, you pay your taxes, you die. That's the deal, right? Well, apparently, nobody told Turritopsis dorni, the so-called immortal jellyfish. This tiny little hydrozoan, no bigger than your pinky nail, has a party trick that would make a vampire jealous. When it gets old, or stressed, or injured, it can basically hit the reset button on its life cycle. Instead of dying, it can revert to its earliest stage of development, a blob of cells called a polyp. It settles back down on the seabed, reattaches, and starts its life all over again, growing into a new, genetically identical jellyfish. It's biological immortality. It can repeat this cycle indefinitely, unless something eats it, or it gets a particularly nasty jellyfish disease. Imagine being able to just nope out of old age and go back to being a baby over and over, again and again, for all eternity. Sounds just as terrifying as exciting. Now, this isn't conscious, of course. It's a biological process called transdifferentiation, where adult cells can transform into different types of cells, effectively rejuvenating the organism. But the implications are mind-boggling. Here's this tiny simple creature, basically a floating stomach with tentacles, that has cracked the code to eternal life, while we complex, brainy humans are stuck with a one-way ticket to the grave. Scientists are studying these things intensely, obviously hoping to unlock secrets of cellular regeneration. But there's something profoundly unsettling about a creature, however small, that can just decide not to die. It's a quiet, gelatinous middle finger to the fundamental rules of life and death as we know them. Tier 6. The Abyss. Anoxic Dead Zones. You think the ocean is teeming with life everywhere? Think again. There are vast and sometimes rapidly expanding areas of the ocean called dead zones, or more scientifically, anoxic or hypoxic zones. These are regions where the dissolved oxygen in the water drops to levels so low that most marine life either flees or suffocates and dies. Fish, crabs, oysters, anything that needs to breathe oxygen just can't survive. It's like an underwater desert. Now, some dead zones are natural, poorly ventilated basins, for example. But what's truly disturbing is the rapid increase in the number and size of these zones, particularly in coastal areas, largely thanks to us. Nutrient pollution, primarily from agricultural runoff, fertilizer washing into rivers and then out into the sea, and sewage, causing massive algae blooms. When these algae die and sink, bacteria decompose them and in the process suck up all the available oxygen in the water. Voila, dead zone. The Gulf of Mexico has a notoriously large one that forms every summer, sometimes growing to the size of New Jersey, full of dead aquatic stuff. But here's where it gets extra creepy. Sometimes these zones can appear and disappear with little warning, and their effects on marine life can be unsettlingly rapid. Imagine a vast school of fish suddenly swimming into a wall of water where they can't breathe. Panic, suffocation, death. Entire ecosystems can be wiped out. And there's evidence in the geological record of ancient massive anoxic events, oceanic anoxic events, or OAEs, that caused mass extinctions. Are we pushing the modern oceans towards a similar tipping point with our careless pollution? These dead zones aren't just an ecological problem. They are a glimpse of an ocean that is struggling to breathe, sometimes with effects so swift and devastating they feel like something out of a horror film. But hey, at least these dead zones are still visible. You know what isn't visible? The ocean buried deep within the earth, outweighing all the water on the surface several times. But more on that in a bit. Fossil record abyssal gaps. You know how scientists love their neat little evolutionary trees? A begat B, B begat C, all nice and orderly, leading up to us, the supposed pinnacle of creation. It's cute. The deep sea, however, seems to enjoy taking that tidy narrative, dousing it in squid ink, and running it through a shredder. I'm talking about the abyssal gaps in the fossil record. For a lot of these deep-sea nightmares we occasionally dredge up or glimpse on a fuzzy camera feed, there's just no clear history. They appear in the modern deep sea, fully formed in all their bizarre glory, but their ancestors, good luck finding them. It's like they just materialized out of the crushing blackness. No evolutionary breadcrumbs, no missing links. One minute, nothing in the fossil record for that particular brand of weird. The next, bam! Here's a fish with built-in headlights and teeth like a rusty chainsaw. It's like an existential kick in the teeth for our understanding of evolution. It implies that entire branches of life, vast and terrifyingly different, have risen and thrived in the dark, completely off the books, leaving us to wonder what other biological dark horses are still down there, unrecorded, unseen, and maybe, just maybe, waiting. This isn't just missing data. It's a void in our understanding, unknown carcasses, globsters. Every so often, the ocean decides to remind us of its horrifying depths by unceremoniously dumping a thing on some unsuspecting beach. These are globsters, massive, amorphous, often decomposing carcasses of creatures so large, so unlike anything known, that even the experts are left scratching their heads and trying not to gag. We're talking tons of putrefying flesh, sometimes with weird tendrils, no discernible bones or features that just don't line up with any animal in our textbooks. These aren't your average dead whale, bloated and stinky. These are mysteries wrapped in rotting blubber. Samples are taken, DNA is sequenced, and often the results are inconclusive. Or they point to something known but so grotesquely decomposed it's unrecognizable. Sometimes, but just sometimes, the DNA doesn't quite add up. Or the physical characteristics are so bizarre, it fuels the delightful, chilling thought that this is a piece of something we've never seen before. Something that normally lives and dies in the unexplored abyss, its body usually consumed by the deep-sea scavengers before it ever has a chance to surface. Each globster is a visceral, stinking puzzle, a fleshy reminder that the ocean's depths hide creatures that can still shock and mystify us, even in death. Stronsay Beast. Back in 1808, on the lovely windswept shores of Stronsay, one of the Orkney Islands in Scotland, the ocean decided to deliver a little gift, a truly hideous one. After a storm, the locals found a massive, bizarre carcass washed up on the beach. And when I say massive, reports claimed it was 55 feet long, though parts were missing, so who knows its true size. It had a long, slender neck, a small head, and what were described as 3 pairs of paws, or wings. Its skin was reportedly smooth when wet, bristly when dry, and it stank to high heaven, as you'd expect. The local naturalists were stumped. Some, looking at the long neck, immediately thought plesiosaur. You know, those extinct marine reptiles that look like a sea serpent swallowed a turtle? The problem is, plesiosaurs are supposed to have died out with the dinosaurs, some 66 million years ago. So that would be problematic for the textbooks. Other, more sober suggestions included a grotesquely decomposed basking shark. Basking sharks are huge, and when they rot, their jaw and gill structures can fall away, leaving a surprisingly plesiosaur-like shape. It's a common explanation for many sea serpent sightings, but the Stronsay Beast had those 3 pairs of limbs. Basking sharks don't. Descriptions of its vertebrae and the mane of bristles running down its back also don't quite fit. Despite sketches and measurements being taken and sent off to the learned societies in Edinburgh, no definitive identification was ever made. Was it just a very unfortunate, very decomposed known animal, twisted into some unrecognizable monster by the sea? Most likely. Or did the ocean briefly give up one of its deeper, stranger secrets, a creature unknown to science, only to have the evidence rot away before it could be truly understood? Less likely, but who knows? Underground ocean. We obsess over the oceans on the surface, right? The Pacific, the Atlantic, all that blue stuff on the map. But what if I told you there might be another ocean, a truly colossal one, hidden deep within the Earth's mantle? We're not talking about some underground lake. We're talking about potentially 3 times more water than all the surface oceans combined, locked away hundreds of miles beneath our feet. Now, this isn't a vast sloshing cavern of water you could sail a submarine in. Scientists believe this water is trapped within the molecular structure of a blue mineral called ringwoodite. Seismic waves from earthquakes and such slow down when they pass through ringwoodite that's been hydrated or soaked with water. And researchers have detected vast zones, particularly beneath North America and parts of East Asia, between 410 and 660 kilometers down in the mantle transition zone, where these seismic waves do exactly that. They've even replicated these conditions in labs, subjecting ringwoodite to the insane pressures and temperatures found at those depths, showing it can indeed hold a significant amount of water, up to 1.5% of its weight. Think about the implications. If this deep Earth-water cycle is real and as vast as some models suggest, it changes everything we thought we knew about where Earth's water came from, how plate tectonics work, and even the very geochemistry of our planet. This hidden reservoir could be the source of the water in our surface oceans, slowly degassing over geological time. It's an ocean of unimaginable scale, but not of liquid, but bound within solid rock, a silent, pressurized, superheated presence deep within the planet's guts. The Earth isn't just a rock with some puddles on top. It might be a water world through and through, with its largest ocean completely hidden from view.